Welcome to 80 Days to 80, a special series from the YouTube channel Just Me and My Ace. For the next 80 days, I'll be sitting down with my dad, my ace, to talk about his life, the lessons he's learned, and the legacy he's building as he nears his 80th birthday. We'll share stories about love, faith, politics, business, and of course, family. This is a journey filled with wisdom, laughter, and reflection. Possibly a tear or two. It's also a chance for me and my dad to connect more deeply. We're so glad you're here to join us on this road trip down memory lane. So take a seat, buckle up, and let's go. This is 80 Days to 80. I'm Leisha, and today I'm with my dad again. And today we're talking about what it was like growing up Black in the 1950s and 60s. And that's very specific and a little bit different in terms of our first episode where we talked about his childhood. But we really want to hone in on what it was like, what race relations, racism, and how those dynamics played into the challenges of being a young man, a young person in Indiana in the 50s and 60s. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Dad, you want to say hi to folks?
Hey, everybody out there.
All right, so let's just dive right into it. What was it like growing up in your community during that time as a young Black man or Black boy? Because I think it's important that we talk about you were a boy. You weren't a man, but I feel like based on the conversations we had previously, you had to become or act or behave as a man very early on to help your family, to help yourself. And I think that in and of itself comes from the history of America, the way that racism is institutionalized and systematic in our culture here in America. So you want to talk a little bit about what that was like for you?
Yeah, I think it's important to know that just like today, Black people were under tremendous pressure just to survive back then. And they were tethered to the history of where they came from and what their education level was. There were these class breakdowns in the Black community. For example, when we went to school, integrated high school, most of the white kids had nice tennis shoes, nice clothes, and that kind of thing. And they were not necessarily handicapped by the economic conditions of their parents. But me as a Black kid in an integrated high school, we had to we were consciousness of survival in addition to trying to do the academics. And there was always those challenges. The one good thing about Black kids is that they've always excelled athletically. So, with all the Black kids were on the basketball team. We were the stars, and when we went down the court, they were we were pushing the ball. We were, and just like in the college today, the Black kids really run the athletic components of that, and that was our savior in many ways, is the athletic abilities. On the other hand, it was still a very racist society. I know this one particular incident in which I was on the basketball team, and the coach invited us over to his house for pizza. And of course, he's a white coach, and we goes to his house, and his little 4, 5, 6-year-old kids come in, and I never will forget this because it was traumatic. We go into his house, and then this little boy says, "Daddy, who are these people? They're real dirty. They're dark. They're dirty. What's wrong with them?" Now, this is the coach's kids. The culture of how they thought about Black people back then was hurtful because we were playing for this coach. His whole career and everything depended upon these Black kids. But yet when we go into his house, we could tell that he had not culturally prepared his kids for really who we are. And so that diminished our I can't speak for all the rest of the people, but it diminished my respect for the coach and the way he lives his life outside of the school. So
did you so this was in high school in Hallville.
This was middle school, or grade school.
Was it a racially mixed middle school?
Yeah, it was racially mixed.
So there were some white kids on the team.
Yeah, it was some, maybe one or two, but the school was racially mixed. Racially mixed,
I should say.
Yeah, but most of the teachers were white.
Okay.
In fact, you didn't have the majority of them were white, and we were living under the auspices of a white administration out in Hallville, Washington High School, George Washington High School.
High school or middle school?
Well, it was School 54 middle school, but I graduated and went to high school, George Washington.
And this coach was in middle school? Yeah,
this was in middle school.
So my question regarding like the coach and his kids and you all coming there, do you white people are often like caught in this space where they're trying to do something, or they're they feel like they're an ally. These are words that we use now. Do you think that his intentions, which was also are dangerous, his intentions were to make you all feel, or to grow a relationship with y'all in a way that he may not have had with black people before, and that he just didn't understand that because he was not preparing his kids, that the impact when his kids said something like that to you all were going to outweigh his intention of trying to be, inclusive or create a partnership or practice with his team that might have been different than what he had previously done?
Well, just to put this in full context, this was during the civil rights period, pre-civil rights period, in which we had a lot of violence and racism going across the country. And full context, this white coach was probably living in the full context of how they viewed black people and how they saw black people back then. And so I don't necessarily blame him, because he was not out of step with how most white people saw black people back then. So,
but would they have y'all over to their house?
Well, I think it's undeniable that we made this coach. I mean, and I think he was trying to show some gratitude and appreciation, unbeknownst that would fall out like that. They're not conscious of their racism.
Right. They have intentions, whether it's performative, whether it's for their own benefit.
Yeah.
But he didn't understand the impact of the words that his kids would, to this day, have on you.
Have on me. And the deal is that unconsciously, I think he was just trying to treat us like human beings, like he would do anybody. But the real world said otherwise about how they treat black people back then, and his kids were victims. I call them victims of that racist and white supremacist attitude, and unbeknownst to him, maybe even.
Well, I mean, he wasn't intentionally.
No, I don't
creating space for them to be around, because it seems like this might have been the first black people that they had a real experience with in real life.
I can't speculate. Honestly, that one incident turned me off from that whole situation with them. I never got recovered from that incident, and I don't know. It was kind of indicative, because since it was a mixed school, they couldn't be overt about it. They all their racism, white supremacy was covert and subliminal in many ways to how they treated us, because anything else would mean that they would be called out on it or that kind of thing. So it was a difficult thing for us as black kids growing up in that, because we knew we were limited, and they pegged us, they put us into categories, and they made life difficult for us outside of the
Right. So did you have an opportunity to talk with any of your other teammates about that situation, or another person, or was it something that you only held inside and was able to think about?
As a teenager, we were just trying to survive, just trying to get through it. Most of us didn't know whether we were going to graduate from high school. We thought we were done something if we were going to graduate from high school. When you graduated from high school in Indianapolis, back during them days, you done something. I was on the honor roll.
Right.
I was on the honor roll. Man, I was hot stuff.
Okay.
Because, and of course, hot stuff. Given the tracks that I was in,
being on the honor roll still meant you were going to be a janitor.
Right. Because I took school. I took school seriously. I did my homework when I did my homework when I was on jobs where I had time to do it, and it was not easy trying to meet the expectations. And the big thing was showing up every day. Being able to have a good attendance record and all that kind of stuff, because, my family was dysfunctional. My mom was doing a lot of drinking. My dad was, almost always unemployed or doing low-level jobs. So it was a dysfunctional situation that you had to deal with, Doing homework, trying to learn history when your mom and your dad, your mom, she goes on Mom was working from 11 to 7, that swing ship at night. I don't know if people understand when your parents are gone, your whole piece is disrupted when you don't have parents to know you're safe and you responsible for the security and safety of your siblings. That's not a good feeling.
I want to, before we go into another situation or talking more about your family, I want to go back to the basketball piece, where you were talking about, Black people at least had athletic opportunities. But the reality is that they didn't, because there could be a lot of good basketball players. Everybody wasn't going to get a scholarship. Everybody wasn't going to go on to be professional. I don't even know when, and professional isn't like the professional basketball players we see today, even if they were going to be an NBA player or professional player. So even, being an athlete may have given you some reprieve in terms of how you walk through the high school, how you are treated favorably in some instances because you are bringing that notoriety to a school for being a good basketball player. But being a basketball player wasn't going to get you out of the ghetto necessarily for most kids. It wasn't going to improve your economic situation for most kids. So thinking about that, when you say it was the thing that you all had, outside of being a star, what was it? What else could that be that y'all had there?
Well, it's a little bit more complicated than that. There were class situations for Black people like there is for everybody else. We had, people that went to that school whose parents were administrators, who worked at the post office, had good jobs, and really were middle-class Black people. So there was, one of the things I learned is that if you can't see it, you can't be it. And if your environment involve people who have distinctly prominent jobs and roles, then you can see yourself being in that role at the end of your existence, your career, or whatever, and you can work toward that model of what you want to be. But many of us, we when we went home, we was in the hood.
Right.
We was in the deep hood.
Right.
And the pathologies that the hood produces around drug dealing, around criminal activity, around how you enjoyed yourself even, was pretty well contained to your existence once you leave school.
Right.
And so really, we got glimpses, and it's something called cognitive dissonance. We go home and watch TV, Leave It to Beaver, and think of how wonderful America is, and then we get to the hood, we ain't none of that. And so that messes with people's heads.
Yes.
It messes with people's heads. And what y'all put on TV and how y'all think America should be, and we ain't got none of that. We trying to eat some pork and beans and wieners. Right.
So then that does underline the thought that I'm having, that athleticism for Black folks in the school did not necessarily create a pathway for the majority out of the situations that they were often born into.
No question. It was a sugar high.
Okay.
No question. It was a real, but it was what it was, which was we all thought we could beat up white people physically. Mm-hmm. We all thought. I'll give you this story. I thought I could beat up this one white boy. We went into the bathroom and I thought I was going, that white boy hit me in the nose. I said, well, okay, wait a minute.
Let's talk about this.
Let's rethink it.
Okay, yes, right. Yeah, which is a stereotype that is still today, right? Black people are athletes. They're strong.
You're going to walk in there and beat up on this white boy. Not so fast.
Right. Okay, so now, talking about race and culture in this time in the 50s and 60s, I want to talk about how that played in your family dynamic. So you talked a little bit about my grandma. She had struggled with alcoholism. Mm-hmm. My grandfather, as I know, did not know how to read or write.
Could not read or write.
And they both came from Kentucky, or? Well,
my dad is from West Point, Mississippi. They were from the South. They moved up to Indiana with my grandfather. Mm-hmm. My mother, for all intents and purposes, was in a place called Olinda, Tennessee, which was basically a tobacco plantation. Basically, when you look around and see what was going on, it was nothing but a plantation. They worked for white people. Some of them had some independence, but they were sharecroppers and lived on white people's stuff.
Yeah. So how do you think, when we talk about race and culture, how do you think those situations, those legacies, the way that just your parents, I'm not going to get into, your grandfather, your great grandfather and things like that, but just your parents, how they came to be parents, what their life was as they came together to be a couple, and then parents, what they had to work with.
Sure. So, I regret that I never really knew my mother because she was saddled with a lot of pain that I didn't know until late. Because, they didn't talk about the racism. Mm-hmm. It was a forbidden situation. And I don't know if you've seen my grandmother, my mother's mother. She's a half white looking woman. Mm-hmm. And her brother, Uncle Bob.
She's half white looking, or she's half white?
I think she's half white.
Okay.
I really think she is. We don't know. Okay. I can't go back there. She was Groves, and people don't talk about that stuff. Mm-hmm. They weren't talking about that then. But their existence on those things were humiliating most of the time. They ironed white people's clothes. They took care of white people's kids. My mom told me the story of these white people they had, in which they had two dogs, two Labradors. One was a brown Labrador, and the other one was a black Labrador. And I couldn't make this up if I wanted to, but my mother said the brown Labrador dog was named Chocolate. The black Labrador was named Nigger. Mm. I mean, it was all right. Bring Nigger over here, and so they used those symbolisms to degrade black people across the board, while they were dependent on them the whole time. So you had to supplement yourself to white people in just about every category that you were doing. You had to buy your food from them. They had the one general store. They would cheat you out of your stuff. They'd make you pay more for what you had to do. They were basically still on a plantation back all the way up to the time they escaped Tennessee. Mm-hmm. And then when they saw people up in Indianapolis having relative freedom, then that's why there was a great migration from the south to the north. Mm-hmm. People thought they could live a better life. At least there was a measure of freedom. It was a facade too, in many ways, but it was a step up in terms of your freedom of your mind. Right. But the hurt and pain of living under those conditions translated right on up to Indianapolis. How you felt about yourself, who you married, the kind of decisions you made. And I like to tell the story. My mom, for example, she graduated from high school. Mm-hmm. One of the few black people to graduate from high school, and it had to be 1942. Graduate. I saw that picture that you got right there. Mm-hmm. She's living on a plantation in Tennessee, graduating from high school. That's a phenomenal achievement on her part.
Right. Yes.
And so she had, some internal mechanism in it, but man, it could get wiped away. I often wonder, why would she marry my dad, who couldn't read or write? Mm. My dad had game.
He has game.
Yeah, game. So that, but you're looking for acceptance in all the wrong places. Mm-hmm. You're looking for somebody. The culture of those conditions down there really prepped you to be in very precarious situations as you moved into your life.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the long and short of it. And the thing I want to say about that, to this day, having an education, these layers of progressibility, the ability to be progressive in your careers is layered. And to this day, the denial of these opportunities rests with us today. Today, you and Shania are probably still the most educated black persons in our family at the postgraduate level. Mm. You understand what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. You would think by now we would have 5 or 6 doctorates, so we would have given.
Would you though?
I don't know. I just think I'm just saying.
We would hope, right?
We would hope.
But given that we're talking about systematic and institutionalized racism, and we're coming from a legacy of my grandmother who was living on was a sharecropper who barely graduated from high school, who had the opportunity to go to high school, and my grandfather who did not go to school and did not learn to read or write because he didn't get past a certain grade or whatever it may be. Should we make the assumption that our family would have a host of doctorate level folks? And that, I want to say also that for me and my sister Shania, you mentioned Shania, which is my sister, as you said earlier, we had you as an example of what to look towards, to be, to do, where you drilled in us from a young age the importance of education. Mm-hmm. I don't think that many of your cousins and or aunts and uncles have that and or were that for their children.
Yeah, I think we could parse this as many ways you want to, but Indianapolis has the worst education system on the planet. Listen, and you layer the gang and pathology on top of that.
It's unbelievable.
You layer all the roadblocks, all the booby traps that you find yourself in things, and if you're in the systems that really keep you locked into those things, you're not going to do it. But it's
frustrating. It's disappointing. I get that, but I also don't think that it's unbelievable because, we often joke for our family that the military and Adventists save our lives.
That's exactly right. Right? Y'all are 100% correct on that. When y'all say that, you're speaking truth. You really are.
We didn't grow up in Indiana. We grew up in a much different atmosphere, with its own drawbacks, of course. Mm-hmm. Then there was the Adventism part, the Seventh-day Adventist part that had a clear line to education. Right. Adventists, Black Adventists are one of the most highly educated group of folks, right? So I agree with you that that Indiana has the data points, the statistics that show that people are not going to necessarily advance and quickly. But that's why I'm saying I'm not surprised by it. It may be disappointing for you, it may be frustrating for you, but it's not surprising. Yeah. And I'm happy to say that I think that this generation that are in their 20s and 30s, I think they are being more educated. They have better jobs. They have a brighter future of the folks we're talking about in Indiana.
Sure. Yeah, I agree. I agree. It's just that what's devastating for me is that we have black people in Indianapolis and in Portland who go through the whole education system and are just like my dad, can't read or write.
Oh yeah, well that's
devastating.
That's devastating.
You know, my dad was forced not to do, but these kids, at least ostensibly, have the opportunity to learn and read and write, and they still can't read and write.
Right, and that's a failure on policy.
That's policy.
Government.
That's policy. That's government.
You know,
that's
some parents.
Some parents.
You know, some of that is parents' responsibility. So
generational stuff.
Yeah, that's hard. And you know, with the same thing about education, you know, when I think about even my decision to buy a house when I bought a house, most people weren't thinking about buying a house when my friends weren't thinking about doing those things when I was doing those things, and so to me it's just it's a lot of opportunities involved, a lot of what you see, who you're around, what you know, what right, and so and if you're in the right place at the right time, or you have access to certain people, certain things, you know, it gives you just a little bit more advantage.
Yeah. But the key is you want to.
Yes.
You have to be motivated to see a clear vision for the future. You have to have it in your heart to want something better.
Yeah.
That's the key. So you have to, then that gives you the will to want to fight for it, to put the extra energy, the commitment to doing it. So.
But going back to grandma, you also have to deal with your trauma. You also have to deal with the challenges that racism presents. So going back to your experience as growing up black in Indiana as a black boy, you know, with your family dynamics, facing the racism and what other examples, you know, because then eventually you went to the military at 18, which is still a young man, a young boy at that time.
Sure. So, you know, I tell the story of going to visit my Aunt Tut, who worked at Methodist Hospital. Across the street from Methodist Hospital was a diner that, you know, it was where all the hospital staff went to eat for lunch and so forth. So I was on the way to visit my Aunt Tut, you know, because we lived down there, you know, right there on there, not too far, you know, from there, you know, we just walked down 16th Street. I went in that diner to get a hamburger because I was hungry. And of course, the waitress says, "We don't serve niggers here." This is the first time I distinctly ran across somebody who wants to call me a nigger.
How old were you?
Oh, I must have been 14, 12, 14. I forget exact now, but I was young. And I was kind of taken aback by that because you went across the street from they had a whole bunch of black people working in that hospital, including my Aunt Tut. And for this person to tell me we don't serve niggers here, it was a shock to me. And because, you know, I don't care where I've been, I never thought of myself as a nigger. I'll go anywhere, do anything, you know, because, you know, that's kind of who I've been. But that was a very shock to me, and it kind of spoke to the attitude that Indianapolis had about everything that they do. And from that thing, I never wanted to be in Indianapolis from that point on. I never wanted to live around people who couldn't accept me. And that kind of made me want to get out of Indianapolis, get somewhere else, somewhere where you don't have to be tainted by all that racial crap they was putting out in Indianapolis. See? So,
so it motivated you to get up out of Indiana.
Yeah, it made me, you know, and of course that was one of the reasons why I got into the military. But you can't run from the racism.
That's what I was going to say.
You can't run for it. You know, I don't know if people know it or not, but when I got into the military and I you know, the military gives you this picture that they are, not racist and this and that. But the whole apparatus come from a whole bunch of people who are racist. Mm-hmm. So they can't help but to be racist. Mm-hmm. I was in Vietnam.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about it. So you joined the Air Force?
Yeah, I joined the Air Force.
At 18?
Yeah.
So that was like 19 what?
1964.
So 1964. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you ended up serving in Vietnam. Mm-hmm. But go ahead and finish telling me the story.
No, I was just, one of the reasons why I joined is to get some benefits. Mm-hmm. And I sent back allotments to my parents so they can do it. And then I got married to your mom, and the story goes on.
But did you find that the rate when you got out of Indianapolis and you were in Germany, when you were in Vietnam, when you were wherever the military sent you, was that the harsh reality that you could not escape the N-word and all that it meant?
So I was taking correspondence course from University of Maryland while they were shooting rockets over my head in Vietnam, and my sergeant over me saw that I was taking correspondence courses and says, "What are you doing? You're trying to be uppity nigger, aren't you?" Mm. I'm in Vietnam. We both stopped dodging rockets. Mm-hmm. He didn't like the idea that I'm trying to improve myself, taking an algebra course through a correspondence course. Mm-hmm. You're trying to be an uppity nigger. Mm. Mm. And, and nothing you can do about it. But that shows up on your performance reports that he had control over. Mm-hmm. He didn't like that. So he could influence how I got promoted based upon his racist attitude in that system. Mm-hmm. So that was heartbreaking because we were. I was trying to improve myself, not for any particular reason, except that I know that if I didn't get, I had this downtime. It was the ability to do it. It was offered. It didn't cost me nothing. One of the benefits of being in the service, and so I was going to take advantage of it, and I did.
Because did you ever see yourself as being a career military person?
No, I never saw myself as being, but I spent 8 years.
Yeah.
Okay. And they offered me this back then, $5,000 to re-up. So $5,000 back in them days
was $5,000.
It was a nice chunk of change, and I got a lot of, I followed the same path when I was in the military. I was a crew chief on Air Force. My aircraft was the best aircraft out there.
Right.
I got a lot of awards for having the best maintained equipment, and I got a lot of training. There was a lot of discipline, a lot of systems that I learned through the military. Mm-hmm. I had the GI Bill when I got out. That's how I got my college stuff. And so the military, I traveled. Yeah. And, just a lot of stuff.
It was a lot of stuff, but it did not, you were out of Indianapolis, but the reality is that you realized you couldn't run away from the racism or N-word.
You cannot run to it.
And so how did you adjust with this new, this understanding now, okay, I thought this was an Indianapolis thing, or this was a thing happening, and maybe more so in a vacuum, but now that I've been to other countries, I've been to other cities, I've been in the military, I see that racism is everywhere. How did you adjust, or what did you determine your life was going to be like that with that realization?
Well, the truth of the matter is that's why y'all in Portland. I was running from it still. Mm. When you come to Portland on its face value, it's a utopia. There's a book called A Peculiar Paradise, and it kind of gives you that impression that you're going to be accepted here. Mm. It's a peculiar paradise. People are friendly in a relative sense. You got the fresh outdoors. Ain't but 5 of y'all out here. Mm-hmm. So you ain't, so people will tolerate you. I remember when when I was in the military, we was in Mountain Home, Idaho. We go down to Boise, which is Boise is white. Mm-hmm. And you go down there and you were just like in a zoo or something. White people want to see you. They want to touch your hair. Mm-hmm. Want to see, this is what a Negro looks like. And, so we've experienced that. in Boise, Idaho, when we was stationed at Mountain Home, Idaho base.
Which is the same way that you experienced, or that your coach's little kids experienced.
Yeah. You know, when you go to a place where, you know, you are an object, you are a phenomenon, then they take the stereotypic view of who you are, and then they apply that to you in presence. You know, we were just like, these are real black people. You know, they look at them, you know, and they're not on TV, you know, so these cultures who don't respect black people and their history, don't know anything about it. They don't know what to do with you, so to speak. And when they do want to do something with you, it's almost always negative.
Right. So what I feel like in these stories and in these situations that you're telling us about, whether that was with your coach that we talked about in episode 1, or with your aunt. I think Honey, where we're going to get a hamburger, and you recall the N-word, and even in the military, how that followed you. I don't hear you talking about how you pushed back about those things, like you internalized them maybe, or you took them and you move forward, but I don't hear like anything that you physically pushed back, or that you like boycotted something, which is interesting to me because, you know, in your later years, that's what I most know you for, is boycotting, is pushing back, is advocacy and activism. So did the experiences when you were in Indianapolis and when you were a young man get you to the point where you got to become an activist? Or are we missing your activism or pushback that you did in Indianapolis?
So there's a whole period here that we're leaving out, and that's when I became a Seventh-day Adventist.
Okay, so I don't want to get too deep into that. You don't want to get into
but
answer that question about, like, when you were experiencing the racism in Indianapolis, was there any passive or active forms of resistance to that behavior? Because I know the times was different, right? And like you said, you had to respect your teachers, and you know, it might have been more dangerous for you to do some things in those days. And even in the military, you had people that were, you know, they had power over you, right?
Sure. So my answer was to work harder. My answer was to spend as much time as I can reassuring myself who I am, what I do, and take advantage of every opportunity that I could to reaffirm who I am as a person. And it paid off. You know, it paid off. You know, I yielded results. I got accolades for the work I was doing. You know, it's always been to prove them absolutely wrong, or whoever's wrong. And a big part of that had to do with my parents trying to make sure they were proud of me, you know, and that when they looked at me, they can say, you know, I got a son that's doing this, I got a son that's doing that. And to be a model, that was a motivating factor for me to do that. And of course, when you really look deep at our family, you see that in spite of all the things they've been through, they're pretty good people, you know.
Yeah, because you know, you talked about your grandfather, and he had businesses. He was gonna be self-made. He was gonna make sure he was able to take care of his kids. And you modeled yourself after that, in terms of your work ethic, in terms of your ability to take advantage of opportunities and create your own way, your own path. So I agree that the family, our family, you know, despite the struggles we've had, have always been a resilient people.
Yeah, been very resilient, and so trying to model what you want to be, you want your family to be, and even in my personal life, trying to avoid being dysfunctional. Trying to avoid being caught into all these traps, you know, trying to avoid being an alcoholic, trying to avoid trying to avoid running as far as you can from any drug abuse.
Right, and repeating, repeating something.
Yeah, all these things that tend to want to drag you down a rabbit hole to destruction. I was determined not to do that. And so that's been, if you want to push back against racism, the best thing to do is to be the best person you can be for yourself and your family.
Yeah. Okay. Any other stories, gems, anecdotes about growing up black boy?
Yeah, the thing that I regret most is not knowing Black history, where I came from. If I had it to do all over again, I would find out ancestrally where we came from, understanding who we are, how we got on this planet. I was very late in life getting to the point of knowing our history and building self-value within knowing who you are. And that's why I wanted to move over into being an Adventist. It's the first time I understood that if God is your father, you don't need too much more. You when you realize your where you came from and who made you, then nobody can get over on you for real. If in fact you acknowledge that and act on that, if you sit there and be passive about it, then you might as well not even know that. But at the end of the day, if God is your father, I learned this in the Adventist church. If God is your father,
who can be against you?
You can be Who you can be anything. You can be anything.
Yeah.
You can be anywhere. And of course, that's the adventure of being a child of God that makes you understand that you are not going to stand for anything less
than that. Yeah. Well, we're going to talk about religion, spirituality, faith, in another episode coming up. But I want to thank you for giving me a little bit more insight and inspiration about how, despite our challenges, Black people, I'm so proud to be Black. When they ask people if you could be any race, I'm gonna be Black.
Yeah,
I'm gonna always choose Black. So I thank you for that, and I hope you all have enjoyed this conversation that me and my dad have had about how far we've come, where we've been, how far he's come, how far our family's come and continues to go. Thanks for being a part of this journey, and we'll see you on the next episode. Thank you for joining us on 80 Days to 80. These talks with my dad are a living archive, a gift to our family and to anyone looking for wisdom from different generations. If you liked today's episode, follow Just Me and My Ace on YouTube for more stories. Please share this journey, leave a comment, and tell us what stood out to you. Until next time, keep listening, keep learning, and keep celebrating life.